My name is Sophia, and the night everything changed started with a single empty chair and the sound of cruel laughter echoing through crystal chandeliers. The anniversary gala for Blackstone Tech was held at the Grand Meridian Hotel in downtown Chicago, where tech moguls and venture capitalists gathered under glittering lights to celebrate another year of Silicon Valley dominance. Everything was meticulously planned, from the imported orchid centerpieces to the live jazz quartet playing softly in the corner. Everything except my invitation. I stood at the entrance to the ballroom, scanning the elegant crowd for familiar faces. My husband Derek was somewhere inside, probably networking with his colleagues from the engineering department. But as I approached the registration table, the hostess looked at me with confusion. "I'm sorry, but I don't see your name on the guest list," she said politely, scrolling through her tablet. "Sophia Chin," I repeated. "I'm Derek's wife. Derek Chin from the AI development team." Her expression shifted to something resembling pity. "Oh, Mrs. Chun. I have a note here that says, well, it says this event is for employees and their immediate family members only. Perhaps there was a misunderstanding." Heat rushed to my cheeks. I knew exactly what this meant. Derek's sister-in-law, Vanessa Sterling, was the VP of Corporate Communications at Blackstone Tech. She had organized this entire gala, and she had deliberately excluded me from the guest list. Through the glass doors, I could see Vanessa holding court near the main stage, her silver designer gown catching the light as she gestured dramatically to a group of executives. Her husband, Marcus, Derek's older brother, stood beside her with the same entitled smile I'd grown to despise over the past 4 years. "Let me call Derek," I said, pulling out my phone. Of course, the hostess replied, but her tone suggested she thought this was a waste of time. Derek answered on the third ring, and I could hear the party noise in the background. "Sophia? Where are you?" "I'm at the registration table. They're saying I'm not on the guest list." There was a pause. That must be a mistake. Let me ask Vanessa." I watched through the glass as Derek approached his sister-in-law, saw them have a brief conversation, saw Vanessa shrug and shake her head with exaggerated innocence. Derek returned to the phone. "She says the invitations were only for employees and their spouses," he said quietly. "Since you're not technically working right now." "I'm not working because I've been taking care of your mother while she recovers from surgery," I said, my voice carefully controlled. "And I'm your wife, Derek. That makes me your spouse." I know. But Vanessa says the company policy is very strict about these events. Maybe it's better if you just go home? I'll make it up to you." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "You're not going to fight for me." "Sophia, please don't make this difficult. I'll be home by 11. The line went dead. I stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. Then I smiled at the hostess, a small, controlled smile. "Thank you for checking," I said. "I think I'll take a walk instead." But I didn't leave the hotel. I took the elevator to the mezzanine level and found a quiet corner overlooking the ballroom. From there, I could see everything: the networking, the presentations, the careful choreography of corporate politics. And I could see Vanessa Sterling basking in her moment of triumph, probably thinking she had successfully put me in my place. What Vanessa didn't know was that I had been watching, learning, and preparing for this moment longer than she could imagine. I pulled out my phone and composed a simple text message. "It's time." The recipient was Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, the CEO of NeuralSync Technologies, and my former boss before I left to care for Derek's mother. What Derek's family didn't know was that Elizabeth and I had maintained our friendship, and that I had been quietly consulting for NeuralSync on a project that would revolutionize artificial intelligence. What they also didn't know was that Blackstone Tech had been trying to acquire NeuralSync for over a year, and that Vanessa Sterling had personally botched the negotiations 3 times with her condescending attitude and aggressive tactics. 3 days later, the tech world was buzzing with news that sent shockwaves through Blackstone's headquarters. NeuralSync Technologies had announced a groundbreaking partnership with quantum computing giant Meridian Systems, a deal worth over $2 billion that would make them the dominant force in AI development. The announcement came with a personal statement from Dr. Morrison. This partnership represents our commitment to working with organizations that share our values of respect, innovation, and inclusive leadership. The implicit criticism of Blackstone's corporate culture was impossible to miss. I was in my home office when Derek burst through the door, his face pale and his usually perfect hair disheveled. "Did you see the news?" he asked breathlessly. "About NeuralSync?" "Yes, it's incredible," I replied, not looking up from my laptop screen. "Elizabeth must be thrilled." "Elizabeth?" "Sophia. Do you understand what this means for Blackstone? We were counting on that acquisition." The entire AI division's future was built around integrating NeuralSync's technology. I finally looked at him. "That sounds like a problem for Blackstone to solve." Vanessa is in full panic mode. "The board is calling emergency meetings. Stock prices are already dropping." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. I wasn't trying to destroy Derek's career, just to make a point about respect and consequences. Derek studied my face carefully. "Sophia, you knew about this, didn't you?" I saved my document and closed the laptop. I knew Elizabeth was exploring partnerships. She mentioned it during one of our coffee meetings. Coffee meetings? When were you having coffee meetings with the CEO of NeuralSync? We've stayed in touch since I left. She's been asking me to consider returning to NeuralSync, actually. Especially now that they're expanding their AI ethics division. Derek sank into the chair across from my desk. The AI ethics division that Blackstone was trying to eliminate in the acquisition. Yes, Elizabeth felt very strongly about maintaining that program. She said it was non-negotiable. For the first time, I saw understanding dawn in Derek's eyes. He realized that his family's treatment of me hadn't just been personally hurtful, it had been professionally stupid. "How long have you been considering going back?" he asked quietly. "Since the night of the gala," I said honestly. "When I stood in that hotel lobby and realized that after 4 years of putting your family first, I was still seen as an outsider who didn't deserve basic respect." Derek was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I should have stood up for you that night." "Yes, you should have. I was afraid of causing drama with my family. And instead, you caused drama with your wife." He nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. "What can I do to fix this?" I looked at him, this man I had loved enough to sacrifice my career for, and felt something shift inside me. "I don't think you can fix this, Derek. But maybe we can both learn from it." The next morning, I received a call from Elizabeth Morrison. "Sophia, I hope you've been following the news," she said, and I could hear the excitement in her voice. "Congratulations on the Meridian partnership. It's exactly what NeuralSync needed. It's exactly what the industry needed," she corrected. "And I have you to thank for part of it." "Me?" "Your insights on AI ethics implementation were crucial in convincing Meridian that we shared their values. The report you wrote on inclusive technology development was what sealed the deal." I felt a warm glow of pride. During my months away from work, I had continued contributing to projects I cared about, even if I hadn't been getting credit. "I'm calling because I want to offer you something," Elizabeth continued. "Director of AI Ethics and Social Impact. Your own department, substantial budget, equity package, and complete autonomy to build the program however you envision it. Hey, if you're loving this story and want to never miss an epic adventure like this, hit that subscribe button right now. Your next incredible journey awaits." I was quiet for a moment, processing the magnitude of what she was offering. "Elizabeth, that's incredibly generous, but before you say anything about Derek or family obligations, let me tell you something. The Meridian partnership includes a commitment to opening a research facility in Chicago. You wouldn't have to relocate unless you wanted to. A research facility here? Meridian believes the future of ethical AI development requires diverse geographic perspectives. Chicago will be our Midwest hub, and I want you to lead it." I looked around my home office, at the degrees on the wall that I'd earned but rarely talked about, at the photos of me receiving awards for papers Derek's family had never bothered to read about. When would you need an answer? Take your time. But Sophia, don't let anyone else define your worth again. That evening, Derek came home to find me packing a suitcase. Are you leaving me? He asked, panic in his voice. I'm going to San Francisco for a few days to meet with Elizabeth and the Meridian team, I said, to discuss the position they offered me. You're really considering it? I'm really considering it. Derek sat heavily on the bed. My parents called today. And Vanessa. They heard about your connection to NeuralSync. And they want to apologize. They're saying they didn't realize how accomplished you were, that they misunderstood your background. I stopped packing and looked at him. They didn't misunderstand anything, Derek. They chose not to listen. For 4 years, every time I mentioned my work in AI development, your mother would change the subject to ask if I was planning to have children. Every time I talked about my research, Vanessa would make some comment about how academic work doesn't translate to real business. I know. I should have. You should have told them who I was instead of letting them treat me like an accessory. Derek was quiet for a moment. If you take this job, what happens to us? I considered the question carefully. I don't know. But I know what happens if I don't take it. I spend the rest of my life wondering what I could have built if I hadn't been afraid to disappoint people who never respected me anyway. 3 days later, I was sitting in a conference room on the 40th floor of NeuralSync's San Francisco headquarters, looking out at the bay while Elizabeth presented my proposed department structure to the Meridian executives. Sophia's vision for ethical AI development isn't just about compliance, Elizabeth explained. It's about creating technology that actively promotes equity and inclusion. Her work on bias detection algorithms has already prevented 3 major tech companies from releasing systems that would have perpetuated discrimination. David Chin, Meridian's chief technology officer, leaned forward. The bias detection work, is that what Blackstone was trying to eliminate in their acquisition proposal? Yes, I said. They felt it was unnecessarily restrictive for commercial applications. David and Elizabeth exchanged a look. That's exactly why this partnership makes sense, David said. We're not just building better technology, we're building more responsible technology. After the meeting, Elizabeth walked me to the elevator. So, she asked. I accept, I said. But I want to build the Chicago facility first. I want to prove that ethical AI development can thrive outside Silicon Valley. Elizabeth smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. I returned to Chicago with a contract in my hand and a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Derek was waiting at the airport, looking nervous and hopeful. How did it go? He asked as we drove home. I took the job, I said. I'll be staying in Chicago to build their new research facility. Derek nodded slowly. I'm proud of you. Are you? I'm proud of you, and I'm ashamed of myself. I let my family treat you like you didn't matter, and I stood by while they tried to make you small. I don't know if you can forgive me for that. I looked at him, this man who had been my partner for 6 years, and felt something I hadn't expected, hope. I can forgive you, I said. But things are going to be different now. I'm not going to be invisible anymore. I don't want you to be invisible. I want to be married to the woman who just landed one of the most important jobs in tech. Even if it means your family has to acknowledge that I'm more than just your wife? Especially then. 6 months later, I was standing in the lobby of the newly opened NeuralSync Chicago Research Center, greeting a tour group that included several Blackstone Tech executives. Vanessa Sterling was among them, looking distinctly uncomfortable as I explained our latest breakthrough in ethical AI systems. Dr. Chin, she said as the tour concluded, I wanted to apologize for any misunderstandings we may have had in the past. There were no misunderstandings, I replied calmly. But I appreciate you coming today. Blackstone would be very interested in exploring potential collaborations with NeuralSync Chicago. I smiled politely. I'll make sure to pass that along to our partnerships team. They handle all collaboration requests. As the group left, Derek appeared at my side. He had started attending my work events, making an effort to understand what I did and why it mattered. "How did that feel?" he asked. "Like closure," I said. "Like finally being seen for who I really am." That evening, Derek and I had dinner at a small restaurant near the research center. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest, like our marriage was becoming. "I have something to tell you," Derek said as we shared dessert. "Good news or bad news? Depends on your perspective. I gave my notice at Blackstone today." I looked up, surprised. "Derek, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did. I've been thinking about what you said, about not letting other people define your worth. I realized I was letting Blackstone define mine. I was so focused on fitting into their culture that I forgot who I wanted to be." "What will you do?" "A startup downtown offered me a position as head of their AI development team. It's smaller, less prestigious, but they're working on accessibility technology for people with disabilities. It feels like work that actually matters." I reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm proud of you." "I learned from the best," he said. A year later, the NeuralSync Chicago Research Center had become one of the most respected AI ethics institutions in the country. We had published groundbreaking research, influenced policy at the federal level, and trained a new generation of technologists who understood that innovation without ethics was just expensive destruction. Derek's startup had successfully launched their first product, an AI system that helped people with motor disabilities navigate smart home technology. He came home every day excited about his work in a way I hadn't seen since we first met. And Vanessa Sterling? She had been quietly transferred to a different division at Blackstone after their failed attempts to acquire several AI companies resulted in their stock losing 30% of its value. The tech industry was smaller than people realized, and word got around about companies that didn't value ethical development. I was in my office one evening, reviewing proposals for our expansion into AI-assisted medical diagnostics, when Elizabeth called. "I have news," she said. "The MacArthur Foundation wants to nominate you for their fellowship program." "The Genius Grant?" I asked, stunned. "Your work on bias-free medical AI has the potential to save millions of lives by ensuring that diagnostic tools work equally well for all patients, regardless of race or gender. They think it's exactly the kind of innovation the world needs." I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the Chicago skyline. 3 years ago, I had been a woman whose own family didn't think she deserved a seat at the table. Now I was being considered for one of the most prestigious awards in academic and scientific achievement. "Elizabeth," I said, "thank you for seeing my potential when I couldn't see it myself. Thank you for proving that the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming so successful that your critics become irrelevant." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my office, thinking about the journey that had brought me here. It hadn't started with ambition or anger. It had started with a simple moment of being denied dignity and a decision not to accept that treatment. Derek picked me up from work that night, as he had started doing since our marriage entered its second, better chapter. "Good day," he asked as I got in the car. "The best," I said, and told him about the MacArthur nomination. He pulled over to the side of the road and kissed me, right there in downtown traffic. "I love you," he said. "All of you. The brilliant scientist, the ethical leader, the woman who taught me what it means to stand up for what's right." "I love you too," I said. "The man you chose to become." As we drove home through the city lights, I thought about all the people who had underestimated me, who had tried to make me smaller, who had assumed that quiet meant weak. They had been wrong about everything except one thing. I was quiet. But my quiet wasn't weakness. It was strategy. It was patience. It was the sound of someone who knew her worth, even when others didn't. And in the end, that quiet confidence had spoken louder than all their noise. Sophia's story isn't just about professional success or personal vindication. It's about the power of knowing your own value and refusing to let others diminish it. It's about understanding that sometimes the best response to being excluded isn't to fight for inclusion, but to build something so remarkable that exclusion becomes irrelevant. The people who tried to make Sophia invisible had given her the greatest gift possible, the motivation to become impossible to ignore. They had thought they were putting her in her place, but instead, they had pushed her toward her destiny. Sometimes the cruelest rejections lead to the most beautiful transformations. Sometimes being left out of the wrong room is exactly what you need to find the right one. And sometimes the people who refuse to see your worth end up watching from the sidelines as the world celebrates what they were too blind to recognize. In the end, Sophia's victory wasn't loud or vindictive. It was quiet, profound, and absolutely complete. The best kind of success, the kind that speaks for itself,